Tonight, breaking news, the FBI now joining the criminal investigation into the deadly concert chaos in Houston. A Texas police chief now saying he warned rapper Travis Scott about the crowds just hours before fans rushed the stage, leaving at least 8 people dead and hundreds injured. What we're now learning about the young victims, including one who saved his fiancée and another who was just 14. This as the first lawsuits are filed against Scott and hip-hop artist Drake, along with festival organizers. Also breaking tonight, U.S. borders reopening for the first time since the pandemic began. International travelers landing at airports across the country with traffic back up and running at border crossings in Canada and Mexico. And the families reuniting with loved ones after months and months of waiting. Plus, the suspected serial killer arrested. The man accused of at least 6 murders since September, targeting mostly women. How authorities finally tracked him down. Plus, the major moment in court, the lone survivor shot by Kyle Rittenhouse on the stand, detailing the chilling moments right before he was shot. But the defense getting him to admit he actually pointed a gun at Rittenhouse before Rittenhouse shot him. Saved by social media? The missing teenager rescued. Authorities now saying she used a distress signal from TikTok to alert passing drivers that she was in danger. And church takedown, all caught on camera. A man armed with a gun storming the altar, waving around a pistol, pointing it at parishioners. The pastor then tackling the man, defending his church. Top story starts right now. Hey, good evening. I'm Tom Llamas. We begin Top Story tonight with new developments in that deadly crowd surge at the Travis Scott concert in Houston. The FBI now joining the investigation after a massive crowd rushed the stage when the rapper came on, trampling attendees. At least 8 people killed and hundreds injured. A Texas police chief now saying that he met with Scott before the show and warned him about that crowd. Also tonight, more than a dozen lawsuits have been filed against Scott, hip-hop artist Drake, who also performed, and event organizers. Attorneys behind one suit claiming Scott has a, quote, history of inciting violence and creating dangerous conditions for concert goers. We're also learning more about some of the victims, all of them under 30 years of age, and the youngest just 14. Scott today saying he would cover their funeral costs and refund all of the concert's attendees. Let's get right to Morgan Chesky, who leads us off tonight from Houston.
From packed concert to pandemonium, the FBI now joining a massive investigation into how Travis Scott's Astroworld Music Festival turned deadly Friday night. The 8 victims killed under the age of 30, the youngest just 14 years old. All caught in a sea of nearly 50,000 fans, pushing towards Scott.
You couldn't breathe. I'm talking about everybody was so crushed up on you.
The crowd surge so crushing. Witnesses say it knocked fans unconscious before being trampled.
Everyone was pushing to the front. You had no room to walk.
Some so desperate, they climbed onto the stage, shouting for help.
We need somebody to help him. Somebody passed out right here.
Despite several pauses, authorities worked to shut the show down for almost 45 minutes before it ended. Scott and organizers criticized for not stopping sooner. Crews rushed 25 people to hospitals. At the scene, hundreds overwhelmed medical staff. Some fans even appearing to dance on top of rescue vehicles. Today, Houston's police chief saying he met with both Scott and security moments before he took the stage, quote, to share his concerns regarding public safety. After the show, Scott sharing this to Instagram.
I'm honestly just devastated, and I could never imagine anything like this just happening.
Scott's partner Kylie Jenner, who was at the concert, says they weren't aware of any deaths until later and are now pledging to pay for all of the funerals, some of which have already begun.
You go to a concert to have fun, you don't go to a concert to die.
The family of 27-year-old Danish Beg saying he died saving his fiancée from being crushed.
My brother was trying to save her, and he did. He saved her, and it cost him his life.
This afternoon, the family of Axel Acosta demanding large concerts be made safer.
I wish I could have gone with him, and I pray that he's okay and he's in a better place.
All right, Morgan Chesky joins us now live from Houston. So, Morgan, in your report there, we heard the chief of police say that he spoke with Travis Scott and he warned him about the crowds. Do we know exactly what he told him, and why did city officials allow this concert to happen if they had concerns?
Yeah, Tom, right. The chief said that he had this conversation, which was brief and respectful, is how he put it, just moments before Scott went onto the stage to sing his first few songs of his act that was going to be taking place. We do know that while we don't know the exact specifics of what was said, the chief very much did address the concerns of the crowd, because we have seen videos, Tom, of people jumping security barriers, bypassing guards altogether, and contributing to that crowd size, which numbers an estimated 50,000 people strong. As for why they didn't shut this down whenever they initially expressed that, I mean, the concert had really already begun, and as soon as authorities realized that it had gone too far, that's when they began taking steps to shut it down. Tom?
Yeah, so Morgan, also so our viewers understand, who may not be familiar with Travis Scott's music or his concert, he's made a big name for himself because of his energetic shows and his loyal fan base, and in the past has encouraged what's called raging at his live concerts.
Yeah, Tom, you're right. I mean, this is a high-energy environment. You can talk to the fans who were here, and as shocked as they were to find out about what happened, they said that there is some kind of allure, a draw, to be inside that crowd, hearing the music, seeing their favorite performer up there on the stage. That said, it has backfired in the past. In fact, as recently as 2017, a Scott concert is becoming under increased scrutiny, in which police accused Scott of actually encouraging fans to rush the stage, in which resulted in several minor injuries. Scott pleaded guilty to disorderly conduct. Officials here, Tom, though, stressing that as of right now, at least, there's no clear indicator that he did that in this instance. Tom?
All right, Morgan Chesky for us live from Houston. Morgan, we appreciate that. Joining us now for more analysis on this is criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Bernarda Villalona, and Steve Edelman. He's vice president of Event Safety Alliance. So, Steve, I want to talk to you first because you're not only an expert on the issue of crowd safety, you're also a lawyer. So where did organizers Scott and the city of Houston go wrong?
Well, Travis Scott, as I understand it, was the owner of the festival. The extent to which he organized anything is something that will come out over time. The organizers, as I understand it, were Live Nation and various other entities that they retained for the purpose of creating a crowd management plan, hiring security, making sure that people were deployed in places that would be the most high-risk environments. So that is, frankly, a pretty normal configuration for any large live event. And as I understand it, that's the way this was organized as well.
So what went wrong? I mean, you were looking at the video now. We also saw the video earlier of people rushing the entrance gate. It seemed to just be wild from the get-go.
Well, the footage that we saw earlier, the broad daylight footage of people running through points of ingress, that is unnerving. It's concerning. It's also hours before any reported injuries, much less the 8 people who died. So this is an indication of something, but whether it's an indication of something that's relevant to the reasons that we're having this conversation now, severe injuries and deaths, that's not at all clear. What this tells us is it was a very active crowd that overran security at this time, at these points. I think the more relevant issue is what was security like and what were the arrangements, what were the plans in the areas where people actually suffered severe injuries or death.
Clearly not enough security, at least at the entrance gate. So, Bernarda, you're a former prosecutor. When you think about evidence here, is it going to be all the video that's been played? Because we've seen so many social media clips, local news video as well, crews that were out there documenting the concert.
So in terms of the evidence in this case, obviously you're dealing with over 50,000 people that were there. So you're going to deal with the majority of the evidence. Obviously, it's going to be videos that are shot by people that attended the concert, as well as news media that probably could have been out there. But that would be the bulk of the evidence, and also interviewing people that were there, that were part of the planning, that were part of whoever had conversations with this artist. Those are what the investigations are going to primarily entail.
So, Steve, you're an expert in this field. Like I said, you're a lawyer, too. If you were organizing this event, or if you were there, right? Because there's been some reporting that some officials were nervous that if they canceled the final concert, Travis Scott, then there would be like melee. That could be even more dangerous. Did they make a mistake by not stopping the concert or at least pausing it?
It is far too early to reach any judgments on that question. Going back to the previous point, yes, all the video that we're seeing on Twitter and on the internet, that will surely be reviewed by various interested parties. There also is closed-circuit television footage that was created in real time during the event. I think that in the end, that will be more of a significant historical record than little snippets of footage that show a very specific viewpoint from people who are in the crowd. As for any answers about who was at fault, I'm not going there. And frankly, I don't think responsible viewers should either. We all want to know what happened. And once we know what happened, then we'll make judgments. Let's let facts precede the casting of blame. This is going to be complicated. There will be ample investigation by lots of different parties. Let's see how that plays out and then revisit the question of who was responsible and who failed.
Yeah. Where does the line cross between negligence and a crime?
So it's going to be difficult in this case when you're talking about, because you're not talking about someone that was stabbed or someone that was shot. So in terms of Travis Scott himself, what we're talking about, whether we get into criminal negligence or actually whether there was any recklessness. So where does the line cross? Either in the planning or actually any statements he has made. Remember, in the past, he has been arrested for disorderly conduct, for inciting people to move. If you have that in this case before the incident took place, then that will be key in terms of whether there will be any criminal charges. But as of now, we're months removed on whether there will be criminal charges in this case.
Steve, I know you don't want to make any hard and fast calls, but you are an expert on this, and that's why we put you on this show. We wanted to book you. From what you've seen so far, right, because you have a trained eye. It's not an untrained eye because you're an expert. What did you see that troubled you here?
Well, I have to say, because I have a trained eye, I'm starting with questions, not with answers. I'm looking at footage from 2 o'clock in the afternoon that you showed earlier in this broadcast, and that concerns me. It raises a question about the security planning, about what was anticipated about this crowd, and why this footage is what we're looking at. But it also raises a question about whether this has any relationship to what we're talking about, which is injuries and deaths hours later. So because I have a trained eye, and this is my area of expertise, I'm focused on asking the right questions right now and making sure that the investigation turns over all the rocks so that we can reach answers with which we're all comfortable. There will be plenty of time for blame. That time is not yet.
All right, Steve Adelman, Bernardo Villalona, we thank you for your time. Thanks so much for joining Top Story tonight. All right, we also want to turn now to a major milestone in the COVID pandemic. America reopening its international borders to foreigners who are fully vaccinated at airports across the country. Emotional reunions as families and friends separated for years under COVID travel restrictions meet again. NBC's Tom Costello reports.
Oh, my God. At airports nationwide today, hugs, tears, and laughter as Americans reunited with family and friends. A 2-year wait for Jill and Mark Chambers in London.
Now it's the Christmas selection boxes, especially that English people get.
Who spent the weekend packing for today's flight to see her sister in Connecticut.
Absolutely been the most hardest thing I've ever done. I have missed my sister so much, and her children and her husband, and it's just been devastating.
It was January 2020 when President Trump shut down most flights from China to contain COVID. The travel ban then quickly expanded. But with vaccination rates rising, the White House today reopened U.S. borders to nationals from 33 countries. But to travel to the U.S., most adult travelers must provide proof to the airlines that they are fully vaccinated and provide a negative COVID test taken within 3 days of departure. Starting early this morning, heavy traffic at both the Canadian and Mexican borders. Vaccines required, but no tests. Overseas today, airlines reported mostly full flights to the U.S.
We've seen searches increase 340% for travel to the U.S., which is absolutely massive.
Hopper.com reports the most in-demand U.S. destinations for foreigners: New York, Miami, and Los Angeles. Domestic airline ticket prices expected to move higher in the weeks and months ahead. At JFK Airport this afternoon, Mark and Jill Chambers finally reunited with their American family.
I just kept crying on the plane because I knew I was going to see my sister. And it's been absolutely overwhelming, a whirlwind for a week. And we're here now. Oh my God, I love you so much.
Happiness replacing heartache as America reopens to the world. With the requirement that international travelers to the U.S. must be vaccinated, the question has come up, might that be the requirement for people traveling inside the U.S. for domestic flights? But right now, that is really a non-starter. The Department of Transportation says at the moment that is not under consideration. Airline executives have said that they are opposed to that, keeping in mind that they are struggling to rebound to the kind of passenger levels we had 2 years ago. And if you started requiring passengers to be vaccinated, that could seriously undermine their passenger count. Tom, back to you from Denver.
All right, Tom, we appreciate it. Now to the legal battle playing out across the country over President Biden's vaccine mandates. A federal appeals court stopping enforcement of a vaccine or test requirement for companies with more than 100 workers. The Biden administration tonight now fighting to save it. Miguel Almaguer has more.
Tonight, the White House is trying to fight off a legal challenge threatening the nation's most aggressive vaccine mandate. Responding to a federal appeals panel that temporarily halted the new rule, the Justice Department says it will vigorously defend OSHA's plan to require businesses with 100 or more employees ensure workers are vaccinated or wear a mask and face weekly testing.
The Department of Labor has a responsibility to keep workers safe and the legal authority to do so.
With enforcement set for early next year, the rule would impact roughly 1 in 4 Americans.
This is an incredible overreach by the executive branch and the government that we've never seen. It's unprecedented.
The owner of Ralph's Market, a grocery chain in Louisiana and Mississippi that employs some 500 people, is a plaintiff in one of the lawsuits.
This is not a lawsuit that is anti-vaccine. This is a lawsuit that is anti-mandate.
With vaccine mandates quickly becoming a focal point for national divisiveness.
I know you don't offer it to just anyone, okay?
Today, State Farm stood behind pitchman and quarterback Aaron Rodgers, who said he was immunized, later caught COVID, then said the woke mob tried to cancel him after he chose not to get vaccinated. We don't support some of the statements that he has made, says State Farm, but we respect his right to have his own personal point of view.
Can I go ahead and check your vaccination card?
Meantime, today in Los Angeles, restaurants, gyms, and hair salons were told to start verifying vaccination status, the nation's second largest city with some of the country's toughest rules.
This is mandatory. You know what I'm saying? I want to be protected.
It's unfortunate that in America we do not have a choice.
Tonight, the fight not just to vaccinate, but to mandate.
All right, Miguel Almaguer joins us now live from Los Angeles. Miguel, you mentioned there in your story that the Justice Department is planning to defend this federal vaccine or testing mandate in court. What are the next steps here?
Well, the White House is now waiting to hear back from that appeals court after filing its petition today. We expect the plaintiffs to file their petition tomorrow, so this could play out for some time, Tom, but officials say a decision will likely come in the days ahead.
All right, Miguel Almaguer for us tonight. Miguel, we appreciate it. In politics, President Biden had a long-awaited victory, the passage of a $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill. But as Washington catches its collective breath, there are already daunting new battles just around the corner. NBC News senior Capitol Hill correspondent Garrett Haight reports.
President Biden tonight celebrating 2 victories at the White House: the Milwaukee Bucks NBA championship and the bipartisan infrastructure bill he hopes will be a political slam dunk.
Are you feeling momentum?
I'm always optimistic. It's going to be a tough fight. It ain't over yet, as they say, as the old expression goes. But I feel good.
The motion is adopted.
The late Friday vote a possible turning point for the president, who saw Democrats lose the governorship in Virginia last week and his own approval slide to a new low, just 38% in a poll out today. Democrats now trying to bounce out of a week they hope was rock bottom, with a packed month ahead in Congress. The House plans to vote on the president's $1.75 trillion climate and family care bill the week of November 15th, sending it to the Senate. Both chambers must pass bills to fund the government to avoid a shutdown by December 3rd, and Congress expects to have to raise the debt ceiling again before year's end or face default. Republicans focused on opposing the larger spending bill.
The American people basically said last Tuesday, stop. Enough is enough.
That bill now the Democrats' top priority, with no margin for error left. How concerned are you, or what's your feeling about the political prognosis there?
I am so confident, and I'm excited, quite frankly, that Democrats, when we're in the majority, this is what we do. We deliver for the American people.
Garrett joins us tonight from Capitol Hill. Garrett, Democrats sound pretty confident, but we've been down this road before. What's different this time?
Well, Tom, Democrats have new momentum, but they still have a lot of the same problems. They're waiting on a CBO score to find out what this bill actually costs. And once it gets to the Senate, they've got to deal with Joe Manchin, the conservative Democrat who has wanted a smaller bill all along. But at this point, every moderate and conservative Democrat have said, either over the TV airwaves or in a written statement, that they support this bill in theory. For Democrats, they hope that, plus the momentum, is enough to push this thing over the finish line before the end of the year.
All right, Garrett, thanks for that. We're following developing news from Capitol Hill as well as some other news. The House committee investigating the January 6th Capitol riot, they've issued a new round of subpoenas. The subpoenas targeting 6 top aides and campaign advisors to former President Trump, including former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. The committee says the group was involved in promoting the lie that the election was stolen in the days leading up to the insurrection, including accusations they used a command center to brainstorm ways to halt the counting of electoral votes. None of the people subpoenaed have replied to requests for comment. Okay, in Kenosha, Wisconsin, the homicide trial of Kyle Rittenhouse continues with a key witness taking the stand. A paramedic shot by Rittenhouse during a night of racial justice protest last summer. Today, describing the violent confrontation with Rittenhouse on the streets of Kenosha. Gabe Gutierrez has the latest.
To be the truth, the whole truth, and for the truth so help you God.
As the sole survivor of the shooting that left 2 other men dead, Gage Grosskreutz today described his fateful encounter with Kyle Rittenhouse.
I thought that the defendant was an active shooter.
Grosskreutz says he'd gone to the racial justice protest in Kenosha, Wisconsin last August to serve as a volunteer medic. Grosskreutz testified he confronted Rittenhouse after seeing the then 17-year-old shoot a man just feet away with an AR-15 style rifle.
The defendant had re-racked his weapon with the rifle still aimed at me.
Grosskreutz had a gun in his hand with his arms raised.
What was going through your mind at this particular moment?
That I was going to die.
Rittenhouse fired, shooting him in the bicep.
Who shot?
Throughout the trial, prosecutors have showed the jury videos from multiple angles, painting Rittenhouse as a vigilante looking for trouble.
Our job is to protect this business, and part of my job is to also help people. If there's somebody hurt, I'm running into harm's way.
But today, during cross-examination, the defense ripped into Grosskreutz, arguing he chased Rittenhouse.
You had said that you were looking for a non-lethal way to end this interaction.
That is correct, yes.
Yet you pulled your gun out and began, I'm going to use the word chase. You began chasing or running after a man who was running away from you. Correct?
That is correct.
The defense also pointed out that Grosskreutz was suing the city and could benefit financially if Rittenhouse is convicted. Rittenhouse faces 7 charges, including first-degree intentional homicide. His lawyers insist he acted in self-defense.
Okay, Gabe joins us now from outside that courthouse in Kenosha. Gabe, today was a big day in this trial. Where are prosecutors headed next?
Yeah, Tom, a critical day of testimony here, but the prosecution seems to be near to wrapping up its case. That could come as early as tomorrow. Then, of course, it'll be the defense's turn.
Yeah, and on that point, Gabe, we have not yet heard from Kyle Rittenhouse himself. Do we expect that he will testify in his own defense?
Well, Tom, during opening statements, Rittenhouse's attorneys indicate that he would testify. As you know, it is risky sometimes to put a defendant on the stand because that opens him up to cross-examination. But his lawyers appear to be thinking that it's worth putting him on the stand. They're going to try to keep making that argument that he acted in self-defense. Tom?
Gabe Gutierrez covering every part of that trial for Top Story. Gabe, we appreciate it. Another highly watched trial is playing out in Georgia, where the jury is hearing key testimony in the Ahmed Aubrey case. The defense claiming 3 men accused of murdering Aubrey were trying to enact a citizen's arrest. The prosecution trying to punch holes in the defense's case, the courtroom turning contentious, forcing the judge to intervene. Ron Allen reports.
We are on. Defendants are present, represented by counsel.
Day 2 of testimony began with the jury seeing images from the scene of Ahmed Aubrey's bullet-riddled body. Too graphic to show here. Prosecutors questioning the first investigators to arrive, getting their accounts of what happened, even bringing into court in a box the 12-gauge shotgun Travis McMichael allegedly used to kill Aubrey.
Yeah, so that is the shotgun that I collected on scene.
The defense claims McMichael, his father Gregory, and neighbor William Roddy Bryan tried to make a citizen's arrest of Aubrey, and that McMichael fired in self-defense in a community on edge because of what they saw as a spike in crime. The defense contending that this home security video shows Aubrey at least 4 times at night in a home under construction. The defense claiming he was stealing and not simply out for a jog when the defendants tried to detain him.
He is not jogging. He is running away into the neighborhood, possibly armed, based on prior experience.
Prosecutors pushed back at that while questioning an officer who interviewed Bryan at the crime scene.
Did Bryan ever say he was trying to make a citizen's arrest of Ahmed?
No, ma'am.
Did Bryan ever say he was trying to arrest Ahmed for criminal trespass?
No, ma'am.
At times, the testimony and evidence so contentious, the judge warning the attorneys on both sides.
I've explained on the record before that the professionalism in this courtroom is not just asked for, it is demanded.
Through it all, Aubrey supporters trying to remain hopeful that a jury with only 1 black member will convict.
Justice for Ahmed.
Emotion so strong for Aubrey's father, he leaves the courtroom every time the video plays showing his son's death.
If you seen your kid get blown apart with a 12-gauge shotgun like that, what would you do?
All right, Ron Allen joins us now from outside that courthouse in Brunswick, Georgia. Ron, we just heard there the emotional reaction from Ahmad's father, but you were also telling me earlier today that Ahmad's mother's also there?
She's in the courtroom every day, Tom, and she stays in and tries to deal with all this. And you have to believe the jurors can see this. They can see this mother's pain. And Aubrey's family, the family supporters are hoping that the jury can see the victim as a human being, especially since we have this jury of only 1 African-American juror and an almost all-white jury. There's a lot of concern about that, what that means to this case. So, yes, there's a lot of very powerful, strong emotion in the courtroom. His father says he has to leave because he can't bear to watch the video. His mother stays there, and the video and these graphic crime scene photos are the key evidence because they drive home what happened, and that's why the prosecutors are spending so much time in them. We're going to see a lot of this.
Ron Allen on what is another highly charged trial here in America. All right, Ron, thank you. Next on Top Story, the suspected serial killer. Authorities in Missouri say they have arrested a man for the murders of at least 6 people, mostly women. Federal officials laying out the trail of evidence that led to him. NBC's Zincle Esama has more.
Tonight, authorities in Missouri announcing they've caught a man who could be a serial killer. They allege he shot and killed at least 6 people across 2 states.
We had 6 shootings in the St. Louis area, 3 in the county, 3 in the city. 4 fatalities, 2 in the county, 2 in the city.
Perez Reed is now in federal custody after being charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of assault in 2 deadly shootings. One victim, a teenage girl just 16 years old. Authorities saying more charges could be filed. A criminal complaint showed the FBI had been investigating Reed on a federal weapons charge. According to a police affidavit, an FBI task force arrested him Friday after following him on an Amtrak train from Kansas City to St. Louis. Authorities linked Reed to several Missouri and Kansas shootings with the gun he was allegedly carrying when arrested.
The defendant was arrested in possession of a .40 caliber handgun that matched shell casings located at the body of all 3 victims. The .40 caliber handgun in possession of the defendant also matched additional casings located at the scene of multiple homicides in the city of St. Louis, as well as in Kansas City, Kansas.
The FBI says they were also able to identify Reed from a distinctive forehead tattoo in the shape of a crescent.
We also had a description from several witnesses and 1 victim that had highlighted some unique physical characteristics of the subject.
The victims are mostly women, but police said there doesn't seem to be a pattern.
These seem to be random acts. Why? I can't give you an answer to that. This is still under investigation.
Police are still investigating the 2 Kansas City, Kansas homicides occurring at the same high-rise apartment building.
All right, Zinclay joins us now live on set here. So Zinclay, the suspected serial killer, Perez Reed, he was in federal court today. Explain to our viewers why.
Yeah, so Reed was arrested Friday on a federal weapons charge. That's important. That's why he was in court today. But it linked him, this arrest ultimately linked him to those 6 shootings and murders allegedly, mainly because he was allegedly found with the same gun used in those shootings and those murders. So Reed did decline an opportunity for a court hearing, so he's still in custody. His lawyers declined to comment when NBC reached out. So we're standing by, and he's expected back in court later this month, Tom.
Okay, Zinclay, we thank you for that. Coming up tonight, the highway shooting manhunt. The toddler hit and killed by a stray bullet while strapped in his car seat. The search tonight for the shooter. Plus, migrants clashing with authorities at Poland's border with Belarus. Why the U.S. and European Union say Belarus's president is encouraging all this chaos. And saved by social media, how authorities say a popular TikTok trend helped rescue an abducted teenager from her captor. Stay with us. Top story, just getting started. Back down top story with the abducted teenager rescued. And tonight we're taking a look at how a gesture made popular on TikTok may have helped save her life. It's called the signal for help, and it's worth knowing. NBC News correspondent Aaron McLaughlin has the story.
This man, 61-year-old James Brick, is in police custody, accused of abducting a teenager. He was captured in Kentucky after his alleged 16-year-old victim made a hand gesture popularized on TikTok that alerts people of domestic abuse. A quick-thinking motorist recognized the signal and took action.
What the TikTok hand gesture is you tuck your thumb in and you wrap your forefingers around it and you release, tuck your thumb in, wrap your fingers around it, and release, back and forth.
Deputy Sheriff Gilbert Achardo explained the hand signal used by the distressed teenager who was sitting beside her abductor in his vehicle.
We think that the suspect just thought that she was waving at individuals because she was in the front seat where he was.
An alert motorist saw the signal and called police, giving the dispatcher mile marker updates that allowed police to set up a roadblock and make the arrest. The signal was created by the Canadian Women's Foundation in response to a surge in domestic violence. The signal becoming increasingly popular on TikTok, but not widely known.
The use of the TikTok hand signal signifying I'm in trouble, I need help, was a groundbreaking event for us and maybe nationwide, because had she not given that signal to a motorist and had a motorist not recognized that signal, who knows where that 61-year-old man would have wound up with this 16-year-old girl.
And that teenager is now being reunited with her family in North Carolina. A good ending to a story that could have turned out so differently.
An incredible story. All right, Aaron, thank you. When we come back, the church takedown caught on camera. The suspect pulling a gun on worshipers. You see it there during a Sunday service. The pastor jumping into action to take him down. And the manhunt for the suspect who critically injured a police officer near Atlanta. Isa Gutierrez in the house. She's joining Top Story tonight with how NBA superstar Shaquille O'Neal is now assisting with the search for the shooter. She'll have that story coming up. Stay with us. All right, back now with Top Story's news feed, and we begin with a highway tragedy in Oakland. Police say a 23-month-old boy has died after he was struck by a stray bullet while strapped in his car seat. His mother was driving on I-880 at the time. 4 other people, including 2 children, were also in the car, but they were not injured. Police are now searching for that gunman. And several students are injured after a school bus crash in Pennsylvania. The bus was carrying nearly 30 middle school students when it crashed through a guardrail and into a creek. 7 students and the driver were hospitalized. No word yet on the cause of the crash. Now, under investigation. A pastor hailed a hero tonight after he took down an armed man during a church service in Nashville. You have to watch this video. The surveillance video shows the suspect waving a gun at the altar when the pastor tackles him from behind, bringing him to the ground. Several other worshipers held him down until police arrived. The suspect, who is not a member of the church, is now facing several charges. And the incredible show of sportsmanship at the New York City Marathon. Check this out. One participant collapsing just a few hundred feet from the end when two other runners picked him up and helped carry him over the finish line. The iconic race returned to New York this year after it was canceled in 2020 due to COVID-19. All right, now to Georgia, where a police officer is fighting for his life. The man who authorities say shot him is still on the run, and now Shaquille O'Neal is trying to help them catch him. NBC News Now's Isa Gutierrez has a story.
Tonight, NBA superstar Shaquille O'Neal chipping in on the hunt for this man, who authorities say shot a police officer outside of Atlanta last week. That officer is in the hospital fighting for his life. The basketball legend earlier this year was named Director of Community Relations at the local county sheriff's office. O'Neal contributed $5,000 for information leading to the shooting suspect, bringing the reward up to a total of $30,000.
Let me be crystal clear. We certainly will not tolerate any individual, regardless of who you are, coming into what we consider to be God's country of Henry County and harming any of our peace officers in any kind of way.
The suspect, 22-year-old Jordan Jackson, is accused of shooting Officer Paramans Desai, a 38-year-old father of two who's worked in law enforcement for 17 years. Tonight, he's in critical condition at a hospital in Atlanta. Police say Desai was responding to a domestic dispute Thursday and trying to detain Jackson when he was shot.
So, Mr. Jackson, whatever hole you're in, I assure you that we're coming to find you. We will place you in custody, and we will bring you to justice immediately.
The Henry County Police Department released this photo of the vehicle they say Jackson fled the scene in. Meanwhile, messages flooding in on social media for Officer Desai and his family. One woman sharing her memory of when he responded to her call for a welfare check on a friend last month.
I found her passed away in her home, and he was so kind to me. I'm sorry I'm emotional. He was very comforting and stayed with me the whole time.
Police have a warrant for Jackson's arrest on aggravated assault charges. They urge anyone who sees him or knows where he may be located to call 911 immediately.
All right, Issa joins us now live on set. We hope police find this gunman wherever he is. Can you give us an update on the police officer's condition? And also, we know that Shaquille O'Neal has worked a lot with police over the years.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Shaquille O'Neal has been a reserve officer in many of the states that he's had residences in. So in Louisiana, Florida, California, really all over the country. Like we mentioned right now, this year, he's been working with the Henry County Sheriff's Department, which explains this contribution that we're talking about. He also grew up in a law enforcement family. He talks about it a lot in interviews. He's been very open about the need for police reform, but also his respect for law enforcement across the country. And Tom, I did speak with police right before coming on the air with you, and they told me that Officer Desai is still in critical condition, although he is stable at the moment. The suspect is still at large.
All right, we hope he recovers. Issa, thank you for that new reporting. Now to top stories, Global Watch. And we begin with the clashes at Poland's border with Belarus. New video showing migrants trying to take down barbed wire as thousands of people try to enter into Poland. Tonight, deploying more soldiers, border guards, and police. Neighboring Lithuania now considering a state of emergency on its border. The U.S. and European Union are accusing Belarus of encouraging the migrants to cross over in retaliations for sanctions against the country's president. In Africa, the death toll from a tanker explosion in Sierra Leone continues to rise. This is incredibly sad. At least 115 people killed after a fuel tanker collided with another vehicle in the country's capital. The victims included people who had flocked to the burning truck to collect leaking fuel. More than 100 people are also injured. And the U.S. is now considering sanctions against Nicaragua after a controversial presidential election. President Daniel Ortega claiming a landslide victory after imprisoning 7 would-be candidates and dozens of other critics. It will be his 4th term in office. The U.S. and European Union immediately denounced the election as a sham. In a statement, President Biden said it was, quote, neither free nor fair. All right, time now for the Americas, covering stories from the U.S. and across Latin America. And tonight we're back at our country's southern border. Today's reopening is expected to bring some much-needed economic relief to small businesses from Texas to California. San Diego alone, get this, seen more than $1 billion in losses. NBC's Guad Venegas is there with more.
Tonight, the U.S. land border with Mexico back in business. With non-essential travelers now allowed to come across from Mexico.
¿Ya compró algo?
Compré unas banderitas, me gustaban.
A ver, nos enseña.
Para mi mami.
So she already made a purchase. She bought some slippers for her mom's birthday.
The last time Norma entered the U.S. was back in March of 2020, before COVID restrictions were put in place.
Gracias a usted.
Today, she joins all non-essential travelers allowed into the country by land, yet these can be more than essential to the commerce along the border region. Olivia owns a store walking distance to the port of entry.
About 80% of the customers come from Mexico.
She's now working 7 days a week, unable to pay some employees. The restrictions came with heavy losses in sales.
Well, I think it's about 30 to 40% losses we have it. Oh, it's very bad. It's like we are surviving.
In the San Diego region alone, the San Isidro Chamber of Commerce reports a loss of at least $1 billion in retail sales since 2020. They estimate over 200 businesses have closed permanently near this border crossing.
Wow, we can finally breathe.
The economic losses slamming border cities from California to Texas, with the U.S. Department of Transportation estimating about 100 million fewer land border crossings from Mexico under the restrictions. The impact magnified south of the border, too. The reopening welcomed by vendors.
Para nosotros los vendedores sería como un aumento en nuestros ingresos, porque la verdad serían más carros, serían más ventas.
Que ya era hora, ¿no? Que abrieran la garita para todos esos tipos de personas que también son gente que consumen tanto aquí como allá.
A complex relationship along our southern border where a wall and even a virus can't completely break this dynamic economy.
All right, and Guad joins us now from the San Isidro point of entry there in San Diego. So, Guad, for people coming into the country at the land border, there are new rules with the new vaccination protocols. How might that affect things?
Right, so they're going to be required to be vaccinated. Now, it's very unique here in Mexico because in the country, in Mexico, they do offer 9 different vaccines, yet the CDC has made a list of 7 of those vaccines that are allowed. People with those vaccines are allowed to come into the U.S., although there is 2 vaccines that they give in Mexico, the Sputnik from Russia and the CanSino from China. People that got that vaccine will not be able to enter the United States. That's the only thing that will affect those non-essential travelers that are going to be crossing the border to see family, to be tourists, and to do this much-needed shopping, Tom.
All right, Guad Venegas with the economic impact of the borders reopening. Guad, thank you. Finally tonight, we want to show you a few more of those amazing reunions at airports across the country. Some of those families seen each other for the first time since pandemic restrictions went into place almost 2 years ago, and one lucky grandma meets a new member of the family for the very first time.
Hello. This is your grandma.
For the first time, London resident Bhavna Patel got to hold her grandson. Over the last year, looking at his photos, she's thought about this moment for a long time. But today, speechless.
How are you feeling right now? I don't have words.
Flying to New York on the very first British Airways flight since travel restrictions were lifted, meeting her grandson Kai.
When I was boarding the flight, I told my daughter I'm going to dance, and she said, "Don't be so stupid, don't be so stupid." But yeah, no, I did. It's just, look at him, it's just, there's no words. You can't describe. How do you describe this feeling? You know? Yeah, look. It's such a joy, you know?
The Patel family, separated for nearly 2 years by pandemic restrictions, reunited at last.
We've never met him.
We've never met him. I haven't seen my brother and my sister-in-law for 2 years, so it's really nice.
Also reunited today, for the first time in 9 months, Nirmit and his girlfriend Jolly. She's among the first to arrive from India.
Because of pandemic, all the flights from India were restricted. Because of travel restriction, I could not see her. But finally, she made it here.
I can't even explain in my words how happy I'm. I'm on cloud 9, I can say. So here we are together.
For many of these long-distance couples finally reunited, a day of overwhelming emotions.
So we're really happy that Jews Customs is opening, and really happy that we can be together and build our lives together, because you know, it's been tough, I think, on a lot of people.
I'm still shaking. I'm very excited that he's here. I'm excited to go on many adventures. There's so much to do to show him. He's been here once before, but it's going to be very special doing this all together.
And as for the Patel family, they simply can't let go, hugging and holding those who have been far away for so long.
Honestly, it felt amazing to see them hugging and holding hands, and yeah, it's just, that's the thing that I've missed the most, is them not being able to be together. I'm so glad it happened. I'm so glad it's real. It's just, it's amazing. It feels really, really, really good.
Grandmother Bhavna still overcome after 2 years without her most cherished loved ones.
No, I haven't seen any of them. And him, yeah, just elated. You know, there's no words. I don't have any words.
So happy those families are back together, and we're so happy they shared those incredible moments. We thank you for watching Top Story tonight. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Have a great night.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.